Welcome to the Fishbowl Radio, everybody. My name is Chief here, and joining me today is Juicy and Jalen here, and we got a host of a topic here, basically to talk about the 2023 LSU football season. Here is going to be joining us here as we recap what happened during that season here, as we look forward to 2024 coming up in about a month from now, roughly. I think it's like 40 something days. Without further ado,
About
let me introduce
six, about
everybody.
6 weeks.
About 6 weeks, yeah. So, welcome to the show, Juicy and Jalen. How y'all doing today, fellas?
All right, man.
I'm doing well, Chief. Doing well.
Well, that's okay. That's all good there. So we did a poll on Twitter, well, X, basically. I keep calling it Twitter. Y'all have to bear with me with that. X and Instagram, y'all have voted on this stuff, so we're gonna reveal your results here live here on the Fishbowl Radio. So, guys, what kind of grade would you give LSU from ending the 2023 season? We'll start with you, Jalen. What grade would you give the Tigers?
Hey, sorry about that, Chief. We had difficulties, but the grade I give the Tigers, I'll give the Tigers. I'll say is a B going too high? Is that too high of expectations for this team? I'm gonna give it a B, just because they only lost, what was it, 3 games last year that they lost during the regular season. I know they kind of got embarrassed at the beginning of the year, but they had a great quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who's now with the Washington Commanders now. Besides that big loss against Florida State, they really just racked up wins. They had a close loss against Ole Miss. Uh, Alabama game was kind of iffy with that one, but throughout the most of the season, they had a great season. They won a bowl game, so I'm giving them a B, just because I think reaching the college football playoff, if you reach that, you get an A in my book.
Yeah, a B. Hmm, that's kind of an interesting one there. I'm kind of curious to see what the Twitter poll actually says here. Once we pull it up, X poll. I mean, but Juicy, what grade would you give them?
I'm gonna go with Jalen. I mean, I think a B is what they should be. I mean, that Florida State loss. I mean, I guess nobody can hit them too hard for it last year because, I mean, Florida State should have gotten the playoffs. To me, I mean, we all think a lot of people with common sense believe they got snubbed, but to me, that wasn't a bad loss. I mean, the Bama game was Jalen hit the nail on the head. I mean, I was kind of iffy, but I mean, they did win the bowl game, and uh, that's really, I mean, you end the season on a high note, even without Jaden Daniels, Nussmeyer, they still won the game. So they even have their Malik Neighbors only played like half the game, I think. Brian Thomas Jr. Well, he played the whole game. That's true, but yeah, I mean, this year now with two losses, 3 losses, going to 12 teams this year, LSU might very well still make the playoff now if they only get 2 or 3 losses this year. So we'll see
Yeah,
what happens.
yeah. So I'm thinking about like the grade of I think a B is kind of right where you need it to be. Because the record they had last year would have got them in a 12-team playoff, in my opinion. I think they would have been right in there with them. I think they would have got one
With the
that
losses
large
they had, with the
or yeah,
losses they
that
had.
large. The Florida State loss, the Ole Miss loss. Those two teams there would have been in the playoff themselves, probably. Especially Florida. It's Florida State for sure. Ole Miss, you might have had a debate about it a little bit here, but let me share y'all my screen of what I'm seeing here. So let's see here. Let me pull this one up. I think it gave me the option. There it is. So we're gonna share this here with y'all real quick. Do y'all see my screen?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we asked on the X, and this is what y'all had to say about it. We had 36 votes. I asked it 12 hours ago to see what people would give us about, they had 66% of fans that voted B, 27.8% CC, 5.6% say D or F. But I mean, look, like I always say, that's the internet troll area right there down there. So,
You always gotta have some people somewhere.
yeah. So the 27.8% C is an interesting one. Why? Okay, so I would like to know why they would vote as C. I could see why, like it's national championship or bust kind of thing for LSU or SEC championship, but I think that I could see where they could vote a C. I'm kind of leaning toward a B minus if I had to subcategory it a little bit last year. It's kind of where I'm at with LSU, a B minus. I think that's a pretty good year.
But they'd
Where
have,
the worst,
like you said, they'd have been in the playoffs last year if it had been 12 teams. I believe they would have.
yeah, I think the playoff thing is really what probably has like we should have been in the playoff, but then again it was 4 teams last year to have it to be in that regard of those 12 teams there. They would have been somewhere around that part there. So just looking at that there would have been something to take a look at there for sure. So I mean, just looking at that there, that's interesting to say the least here. I mean, you look at that right there, and that's where it goes there. So looking at that there, so what in 2024 does does LSU have to do to reach that next level compared to 2023, or what would you think would be a disappointment this year
Well,
for LSU football?
to reach that
What record
level,
do you think?
the glaringly obvious thing that really hurt LSU last year was defense, was the sloppy defense. Now, this year, to me, that's the most glaringly obvious thing they need to improve on because defense really still matters, even though in this era of football now, it's all about the offense, but you got to be able to come up with a few stops here and there. I mean, uh, Jaden Daniels a Heisman winner. I think obviously if they'd have had a defense, they definitely would have. They could have very well potentially won a national championship. So to me, it's the defense. I mean, I think the offense did this year for the most part. Should still be fine with Nussmeier. They got Joe Sloan now as the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback coach for Jaden Daniels and that. So I don't think it'll be much of a change for offense. It's just the defense, though, from what I heard too, and read is drastically better with the coaching hires they made on that side of the ball.
Jalen, what you think? What does LSU have to do to reach that upper echelon criteria in a tier, basically, of play? You think?
I think it's kind of, I'm kind of reiterate what kind of what Juicy just said. I think defensively, especially with the new coach and everything, coaches coming in to help out this team. But I think defensively, they got some guys back, like guys in the secondary, like Major Burns, who is a guy who played a lot last year, and then you also have Harold Perkins Jr. at the linebacker spot, who is LSU's best defensive player, who honestly need to line him up everywhere and just get him like you need to treat him like a Micah Parsons, line him up anywhere and just so you can get him to the quarterback. He's good at sacking the quarterback. That's defensively. Offensively, I mean Garrett Nussmeier, he's the guy now. I think it's awesome having a guy like Will Campbell protecting him. And what I'm looking at reports, Will Campbell is going to be a top pick. He's not standing another year at LSU the way I see it. He's going to have another great year. He's protecting Nussmeier on the left tackle. I just think overall it's going to be a different team because you had three guys that like Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas Jr. all three were first round picks on the offensive side. So yeah, you do return guys like Kyron Lacey, but at the same time, those are some big playmakers that you need to replace on the offensive end. So it might not be easy to start, but I think if Nussmeier just plays the way that we know he can play, the same Nussmeier that played in the bowl game last year, I think if he just ups his game a notch and the defense is better than they were last year, which I think they will be, LSU can, like Juicy said, I think they could possibly make this college football playoff, especially when they're going to 12 teams.
And and to add to Jaden's point too, like he talked about Harold Perkins, like Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator they have now, was the linebacker coach when Harold Perkins had his breakout year as a freshman. So That's another point. And another thing, like Joe Sloan, I had mentioned too, was the quarterback coach for Jaden Daniels. Now is offensive coordinator. So I think it'll. I think it'll look a lot better like this year for LSU, and the schedule's not absolutely daunting. So, especially all the home games, all their games you consider tough are at home this year too. So,
Yeah, so the glaring thing was obviously fix the defense heading into 2024. But I think a lot of people need to realize this, and when I say this, last year and the year before, LSU got off really, really slow. They started off really, really slow, stumbling out of the gates. Now, was that a Florida State issue? We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out if it was a Florida State issue or was it the prep by Brian Kelly and staff entering a season. So look, the first two games, you're trying to get your feet wet and stuff, but whenever you playing against a really high powered team like Florida State was last 2 years for LSU, it's going to take a lot out of you and see what you got, what you're made of, and what you can do. But I think they got to get it figured out early on this year. That's a disturbing trend I see with LSU, but you do have a little bit of leeway this year with the 12-team playoff, and that is the ultimate goal for LSU and them. There's no divisions anymore in the SEC, so
so this
it's
year it's
just going
gonna
to be
be kind of like the team. It's kind of gonna be like more of like the who's gonna be the hottest team that makes it into the playoffs that could potentially win the whole thing now.
so the highest. Okay, so the way it's going to break down is Big 12's got a spot, SEC's automatically got a spot, Big Ten's got a spot, and you
ACC
have
has a spot.
ACC's got a spot too, and the highest conference champion
There's gonna be a
out
G5 school in
outside
there
of that
too now.
Power Four. So you got five spots that's going to be taken up here. So
So
the
UL's
other,
got a chance if they can win the conference
yeah,
title.
the other seven spots are at large bids. Now I figure SEC is going to grab another one, and I figure Big Ten's going to grab one themselves. Now, will the Big 12 or the ACC, their second best team, will they get in there? Will they not? That's kind of something that we're gonna have to look at and see how that all breaks
And
down
remember,
here.
there's no
Who
more
should be
Pac-12 this
in
year
that
either.
playoff? Wait, what, Juicy?
And remember, there's no more Pac-12, so that's a Power 5 conference gone too.
Yeah, so all they got left is Washington State and Oregon
Yeah, there's
State.
no more Pac-12.
So yeah, like these mega conferences, basically, they're gonna have to be kind of somewhere here. But I like back to the conference discussion. I've said this many times here on this podcast, and y'all, Jalen, you've heard me beat this to death, and Juicy, you've heard me talk about it too. I don't think there's going to be a Power Four by the end of this decade. I think there's going to be two big mega conferences. Whether they break away from this division of football or whatever, we're going to see what happens here. But I think the TV money is going to be too much for these other conferences to hang around with, especially the ACC and the Big 12. I think they're going to have the same fate as the Pac-12 has when their TV contracts expire, regardless whether that's in 2030 or 2035. I think that is something that we're going to probably see down the road if we, continue on this trek that we're on here, unless something drastically changes and they get a really great deal and they're able to win a couple of national titles to kind of reverse the order of everything. We're going to have to see within the next like 6-7 years to see how it all plays out. But right now, I mean, everything's good for them. They got a spot at the table. That's what you want. And that's what the G5s wanted for years. Now they actually have a chance to prove themselves here. You might have a Tulane beating a
Yeah,
USC in
there's
the
a
first
slot.
round, and
Yeah, there's a slot for a G5 team, the highest G5 conference ranked conference winner. So I mean,
so I think back to LSU and their situation there. Looking back at 2023, if they would have had a defense, a halfway decent defense, they would have won. Probably the SEC. I think they probably would have beat Georgia
they'd have had a good
and
chance to win a national
Alabama.
title.
I mean, do you think they could have beat like Texas and Washington and all them and Michigan?
Oh, I mean, they'd have definitely had a chance. Their offense already would have kept them in the game.
Average defense, didn't they beat Michigan?
Average defense? Oh yeah, I think so.
I think so too. I
Their
think Jane
offense is
Daniels would
just
have
too much.
definitely.
The offense is just too much.
Yeah, it's gonna. I'm kind of curious to see how Garrett Nussmeier takes over the reins here. Is the moment going to be too big for him, or is he going to just gel in there and do
Oh,
very well here?
he's
It's
been
easier to
waiting
come in off the
for
bench.
he's been waiting for his shot for like 4 years. He's been loyal to the school. He could have transferred out, but
Yeah, he could
he's
have.
been
I
loyal to the
mean,
school.
I'm hoping he does well, and like that. I think that's one thing that the NIL has kind of hurt these players in terms of development is the fact that they don't get to sit out of school and learn the system. Now, some systems take longer to for you to fully get a grasp of where I'm supposed to be at in the scheme. If you're getting lost in the scheme here, it might take you 2 or 3 years for you to fully understand what this coach is trying to get you to do for your position, your guys, and that's what hurts these guys. They don't reach their full potential because they're constantly moving around here. So I think it's more imperative for them to get the choice they make and stay early right then and there. It's not always about playing time. It can help you better as a player if you learn their system and what like your strength in that system would be and how it would help you go to the next level. I don't think NIL should be like, yeah, I need to just get money and just go get playing time. Sometimes playing time isn't really the best thing for you. If you develop your skills, it'd be a lot better for you. What do you think, Jalen, about LSU in this 12-team playoff in 24, and how you think Garrett Nussmeier is going to do in 2024?
I'm gonna just go with, and I mean, it might be early predictions, but I really think the Tigers can make this 12-team playoff, especially being in the SEC. And you got to remember too, I know this was 2 years ago, but some of these players on the same Tigers team 2 years ago, a lot of these boys were freshmen, but they went to a SEC championship. Now they didn't win, but they made it there. That's a huge stage too. Now a lot of them are juniors, sophomores, seniors now, and I know like we've been talking about the positions change, people leave, go to the draft, transfer, all that good stuff. But I still think this team is built enough to make it to college football playoff. And as far as Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, like I said, we got to see what he was able to do in the bowl game last year when they took on last football season I should say when they took on Wisconsin. He played a really good game, and they kind of look into it now, many months later. I think he's the guy right now, and he's got to lead this team, and he knows that it's his time. He was behind Jaden Daniels. He knows it's his time. I think he's ready for the opportunity. So I'm ready to see him excel.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. That's going to be something to keep an eye on as we progress through the season and see what everybody's going to do here. So, um, there's always someone gunning for your job here, basically here, especially in NIL. Like everybody hits the transfer portal thinking that they can, get some starting time somewhere else if they think they could beat someone out with a position. But Juicy, what you think about like you do you think it's a Brian Kelly getting people ready to go when the season starts? Is that something that you see that trend that we're seeing the last 2 years getting slow at the gate? You think that's something Brian Kelly's done or any of the
I
staff?
think it's kind of like a leadership issue. Like the players too have to step up. But like Jaden said, they got a lot of people still on the team. They haven't really had a mass exodus of players hit the transfer portal. Like they had like mostly backup players, kind of more role players, not necessarily starters. So a lot of those guys are still intact from freshmen and from when Brian Kelly first came. So I mean, I don't know if it's a Brian Kelly issue necessarily. I mean, they got the leadership, or they should have the leadership, or those players now that want to step up and be leaders. But yeah, part of it is Brian Kelly. I mean, he does take some of the blame for it, but these guys are older now and they're familiar with him, so I think they'll be much more in sync with him to kind of. I think this year they'll be starting off a lot better this year.
Yeah, so if you want to leave a comment here, we do have a comment feed that you could pop up here, send your comments so everybody can see what you're talking about here as we continue this show live here on the Fishbowl Radio. So the one thing I want to stress with everybody is um, how important it's going to be for LSU to make this top 12 this playoff here this year because it's going to set something in motion for them and how it's going to help them out in recruiting. Uh, they've been getting some good prospects coming in and committing, and they've had one that just decommitted to Miami. I know that was a recent thing, but that's still kind of ongoing. I don't really like touching too much on recruiting because of the fact that it changes every single day. Something that I could say here can be completely irrelevant 24 hours from now. So, you basically the way this world is with college football and just college athletics in general is you got to be recruiting 24/7 because that's just the way the beast is. You got to be constantly recruiting your own players to get them to come play for you and stuff. So just to keep them happy and satisfied with your program and stuff. So that they got a tough task, these coaches these days. Probably the hardest task they've had in their whole entire careers for sure. With what's going on? So, um, what? Okay, what's the worst? What's the worst record you think LSU will end up with in 2024, Jalen?
Oh, the worst. Man, because what was last year was 10-3, which included the bowl game. So if you take away the bowl game,
It's 10-2.
no, wait, already 10-4, and the fourth loss was I think the fourth loss was the bowl game, if I'm not mistaken, for last year. So if you take that away, it's 3 losses. I'm gonna so the worst. I would say. Ooh, that's a great question, Chief. I'm gonna go with 8-5.
Interesting. 8-5.
That would be the
What do you
worst.
think? Okay. Uh, Juicy, what you think?
I was gonna say, let's see. I know they got Alabama and Ole Miss both this year. I think they'll beat USC and UCLA. I'm gonna say
Don't forget about Oklahoma though either in that back
Oklahoma.
end.
I'm gonna say Oklahoma. I mean, potentially Oklahoma. They could. Look, I never really thought of Oklahoma as much of a really a loss, but just for benefit of doubt, I'm gonna say 9-3 would be their worst case scenario. I mean, they could surprise me. I don't think they'll lose any less than 3 games, but I mean, maybe if they drop the USC or UCLA game, the absolute worst I think would be 8-4.
So I'm thinking of like worst case scenario that the whole bottom gets dropped out or whatever. Injuries happen and pile up and the season's kind of
Oh, I
like
mean, if they
done,
lose a
dead in the
bunch of
water.
starters, then like 6-6. But I mean, I don't see them like
That's true.
losing that
But
many.
Yeah, like that's what I think that's kind of the aim of my question there. But
I mean, this is
so
saying for the most part everybody stays healthy. I think 8-4 would be the absolute worst case.
yeah, that
yeah,
that fifth that fifth loss would be if they lost a bowl game. So if you take away that, there's 12
Yeah, there's only
regular
12
season
regular
games.
season
So
games.
8-4. Yeah, 8-4. That's what
yeah.
I'd say
So
too.
I'm thinking that if we had like so let's just say the trend continues, they stumble out of the gate against USC. They'll be 0-1. Okay, so let's say they drop the UCLA game. Let's say they drop the Alabama game and they drop the Ole Miss game. That's 4 losses right there. They could potentially drop that Oklahoma game too, which would give them 5 losses on the year. So I'm kind of thinking more along the lines of 7-5. I think that's the worst case scenario for LSU.
But I don't think that's gonna happen, honestly.
If everybody's, I mean, they could potentially happen. I mean, that's why we're playing the games too. I think I could see it happening, but usually Oklahoma kind of they don't play very well in big
But they
games,
are
and they
coming to
got to go
Tiger
on the road.
Stadium. But like I said, a lot of
But
the
yeah,
harder
they got
games are at Tiger Stadium this year. So
yeah, like they have to go on the road to Tiger Stadium, like I was about to say, but that like that 7-5, it's still possible for it to happen, a late season collapse or whatever. But I don't really see a 7-5 record for the team. But I'm just like saying, like worst case scenario, like I think a 7-5 record would probably be what the worst case. Now the best case scenario obviously would probably be national championship win. I think that's the range for
well,
LSU.
well,
What
well.
you
If you
think,
want to hurry
Jalen?
up and throw the best case scenario, I don't think LSU's going to go unscathed. I'm not saying it can't happen, and I hope it does happen. We all hope it does, but I think 11-1 is going to be their best case. I think 11-1 is their best. The only loss being Alabama or Ole Miss, one of those two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What you think, Jalen?
Yeah, I can agree with that too. But it's like, and when you think about it, Chuchi, like when you mentioned like at literally I think it's the last game of the regular season, you got Oklahoma newcomer to the SEC, and then you're going against a USC team but with no Caleb Williams, a South Carolina team with no Spencer Rattler. Like these are games that you expect them to win, but at the same time, especially with you getting technically a new quarterback, new coaches, you just don't know what's going to happen. So if they do lose these games, should we expect them to be bad? I would say no, but at the same time, we do expect them to win games.
Yeah. So anything y'all want to say here before we get off this episode here on the Fishbowl Radio?
I think we're good, at least on my end.
What you think, Jalen?
I think LSU's going to have a great year. I'm excited to see the whole
I think
football
they'll have a.
playoff.
I think they'll be in the mix for the 12-team playoff. They'll be right there. I think.
I think so too, but we can't spoil too much. We got to do a preview show later on in
Yeah, when
August.
we
So
actually run through the schedule, we're just trying to give a.
yeah, we'll do it. We'll run through the schedule, wins, losses. We'll have it all tallied up here. So I'll probably pull it up on there, maybe write on draw or something on it, like win, loss. It should be a fun one regardless. But thank y'all for tuning in here to this episode here of the Fishbowl Radio.